Hi, I'm Michelle from SomeGirlsWebsite.com. I'm here on Photography Wednesday with a video for those of you who have DSLRs and have never in your life moved off auto. You've been too afraid to do it, maybe. You haven't had any teaching on how to do it. I'm here today to help you take this great camera that you have a step higher. So you move off auto and start getting some more better looking photos. So first thing I want you to do is take your camera, switch your dial. I'm using the Canon Rebel T3i. Switch from auto to your AV, or if you're on a Nikon, to your A setting on the dial. You'll notice that when you're on auto, if you press the shutter release, in a situation like here where I'm inside, your flash will pop up. When you're on AV, you press the shutter release, your flash won't show up. If you get in a pinch and you go, oh, I need more light, what do I do? Look for the little lightning bolt, press that, and your flash will come up. But for the time being, I'm going to teach you how to shoot without the flash. So, you move from auto to AV, which stands for Aperture, and the A stands for Aperture. This is your Aperture mode. At this moment, you don't need to understand what this is. Again, this is written to, or being taught to someone who has never moved off auto. If you have moved off auto, you don't need to be watching this video. We'll have other videos for you. So, you move to AV, and here's what I want you to do. I want you to look for a number on your camera that looks like this. In this case, it's 1/320. This is your shutter speed. It might say 1/320. Might move around. It's 1/160. This is telling you how fast your shutter is going to open and shut. 1/100, 1/80. This is 1/80th of a second. So it's going to open quick, pretty quick. And what I want you to do is make sure, as you're shooting in this mode, that your number is always 1/80 or higher. It might be 1/60, but chances are, if you're just moving from auto into Aperture, your hands probably aren't so accustomed to your camera and not so steady. By the way, here's a good way to hold your camera. I never do this. I always forget. You have your hand on your shutter release and your other hand under the lens. I tend to hold like this, and my camera shakes more. If you hold it more like this, you'll get a sturdier, you'll have a sturdier grip, and your camera won't shake as much. The reason you want to be careful about that is as your camera shakes, your picture gets a little blurry. So, hold your camera steady and look at this number. Make sure your shutter speed is 1/80. Some people say 1/60. In my case, it's 1/80 because I have shaky hands. And now you want to, the only thing you're going to do is find your dial that changes your setting, and you're going to start to change your aperture, because this is Aperture mode. You're going to start changing your aperture, which is kind of funny. It's an A for Aperture, but there's an F, which stands for f-stop. That's just what we call the aperture setting, f-stop 5.6. So you're going to start to change your numbers. And what I want you to do is play around with your numbers. The lower the number, the more shallow the focus you'll get. You know how you see those cool photos where you have something and then everything else behind it is blurred? You get that by having a really low aperture. So you want to get a picture of a flower and you want all of the trees behind it to be blurry. Go as low as your aperture will go. On this lens, the lowest it will go is 4. If you have a group of people, some people have said, people will argue, but some people have said if you have a group of people, 8 people, you might want to have your aperture, your f-stop be about the number of the people in the group. So f8, there are 11 people, f11, your aperture would be 11. So all you want to do on this mode when you move out of auto, only thing you have to think about is you have to watch your number and make sure you're at least 1/80 or higher. 1/360, 1/1000, 1/whatever. As long as it's above 80, 1/80, you'll stay away from having camera shake. Then you're going to change your f-stop number, change your aperture. The lower the number, the more blurred background. The higher the number, the more in focus everything's going to be. So if you were out at a scenic view and you wanted to get everything in focus, you might go to f16. Change your aperture to 16. Just as you go up, I want you to really pay attention. Let me take this camera strap off. I want you to really pay attention because I'm inside in a room it's nighttime, it's somewhat well lit. The more I go up, I keep pressing my shutter release to see what this number is. By the way, when I look through the viewfinder, I will only see the bottom number. So I would see 250, not 1/250. I just need to know that those are the same. So the more I go up, let's say to F9 and press my shutter release, I'm at 1/80. If I go to F10, I'm at 160 and 1/60. And right now you're starting to think, oh, wait, I'm going to get camera shake. So I can't go to higher than F10 in this room right now. So I'm at F9, which is still going to give me a large focus. If everyone was at this table, which we still have Christmas stuff up, but if everyone was at this table and I wanted to get, let's say I had kids around and I wanted to get them all in focus, I would want to be at about F9. Now as I move my camera, I want you to pay attention to this. As I was at F9, my shutter speed dropped to 1/40. I don't want that to happen. That means I'm going to get blur if I don't have a tripod. Now, if I had a tripod, that would be different with my hands, but I'm going to get people blur. So I need to go down. I'm going down to F7, F6.3, F5.6. Oh, suddenly at F5.6, I've jumped up. It's kind of hovering between, but it ought to be safe. Even though it goes to 60, I'm going to say, it's 60 to 100. It ought to be okay. F5.6 is definitely going to put the first two people, if I focus on them, in focus. The next two might be a little out of focus because this lower number, remember, is giving you a shallow depth of field. At F4, the very first thing I focus on is going to be in focus, and after that it's going to be blurry. If I were to switch to a lower lens, I could go down to F1.8. That means just a little of what I shoot on is going to be in focus, and the rest is going to be very blurry. So, one other thing you need to pay attention to is the ISO. If you're out on a bright day, why don't you set your ISO to 100. You'll set your ISO to 100. The brighter the day, let's see, let me look at this. If it's a very bright day, why don't you set your ISO to 100. If you're in the shade, you'll probably want to be around 400. If you're inside during the day, you might be around 800. As it gets darker, right now I have it in this room at 6400, so I can move my f-stop. This is going to be your darkest room setting and your brightest light. So as the light gets dimmer, your ISO needs to move higher. But if you're outside, I'd encourage you to go outside, switch from auto to AV, set your ISO to 100. Then you don't even have to worry about the ISO at all. You won't even have to worry about your shutter speed at all. If you're in a bright day, all you'll do is change your f-stop and start looking at how the background changes from F4, if that's the lowest you go, to F22. So start on a bright day, set your ISO to 100, change your f-stop, play with it back and forth, and then later move inside. Find out what ISO you need that keeps your shutter speed at 80, and just always keep your shutter speed at 1/80 or higher. And so I told you you'd never shoot in auto again, and let me tell you, and maybe what's more fair to say is you will never shoot in auto again on a bright sunny day. How's that? So set it to 100, and then do whatever you want with your f-stop by turning it around, and I hope you enjoy your pictures.